Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to continue our discussion of low fantasy gaming. This is by Pickpocket Press. I love this game. If you haven't been able to tell from some of my previous videos, this game is really captured my imagination, and I'm glad to say that I've been able to talk several times with Stephen Gradzicki and about the game and about my love for it, and I decided that it would be good to do a small series on this game as well. And it keeps getting longer and longer. I anticipated it being maybe like 3 videos long, but I added another one, and that's the one we're going to do today. Previously, I talked about putting up a scenario, or talking about creating a scenario of doing a siege type of a game where the characters might be either folks participating in sieging a city, besieging a city, or maybe being besieged in the city as well. But I'm pushed that back a week to the next time, because I had a request from a few subscribers to talk about the classes that are involved uh, in low fantasy gaming and how they are unique and different from, say, other games out there on the market. So that's what we're going to do today. I made some notes. We're going to go through the classes today. I'm going to show you some artwork from the book that kind of depicts the different classes, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. So let's get started. The first one that you're going to encounter is the Artificer, or Artificer, however you want to say it. This is a interesting class that's sort of been more popular in more recent times. This is a character that creates things. Who uses different items to create unique items, unique, not so much artifacts, but weird gadgets, strange items that are useful. Sometimes, sometimes they are, because they're kind of ad hoc, kind of pieced together. While they're very unique to that character, they sometimes can be dangerous, or they can fail. They have this chance to sort of fall apart or not work at certain times, because they're sort of just created at a whim. Uh, so each artificer gets a number of inventions per level that they know how to create, or they have created, and they have use of during those certain levels, and carrying out throughout the rest of your game. Some of those things could be like a black powder weapon, a breathing mask, corroding spray, those kinds of things. There's some ideas in the book of things that you can create, as well as sort of creating your own, working with a game master on creating some kind of a new item for your artificer, and that makes them unique, and they're available for them to use and to give to other people. So like a black powder weapon, they could create and give to another character to use. But again, there's always that sort of, it's it's something they've created sort of on their own, although they get better at creating things and the stability of those things as they level up. At 10th level, you have the ability to create a facility or some kind of a workshop that helps you and aids you in creating these items, as well as maybe selling them and making that part of a lucrative career. Next up, we come up to the Barbarian. Pretty standard Barbarian in this game. You have the ability to rage, you have wilderness lore, those kinds of things. So pretty typical Barbarian as far as, fantasy role-playing games go. At 10th level, you have the ability to become a chieftain and start your own sort of tribe, or clan, as it were, and have followers sort of join you, and you have this sort of leadership role that you've created. The next one you come up against is a bard. Kind of a typical bard, but there's some nice twist to this as well too. Not just a storyteller, not just somebody who uses magic or creates magic via song, but more of an artist or a diplomat, a lore keeper, a storyteller. Think of a skald. The first thing I thought of when I was reading through this, the character class, was Brandon Sanderson finished it, but the Robert Jordan Wheel of Time series, and Tom Marilyn, who was the bard, the storyteller in that game, or in that series of books as well too. It's the first thing I thought of. He's sort of a very interesting character. When you first meet him in the tales, he's sort of this wandering storyteller, and everybody's excited when he shows up. Most people are excited. Some people are kind of wary of him, but you learn more about him as he goes. He's very in-depth, very colorful character, in which he is a pretty decent fighter, as well as sort of this lore keeper, and he has a wealth of knowledge that he's compiled from traveling the world, and so has ends with different kings and rulers, and this is how you're building this character as well too. That you sort of gain reputation with other people in different places, and you gather knowledge and secrets from different places as well too. At 10th level as a bard, you have the ability to create a network of informants because you've been so many places, you've talked to so many people. You know that when you go to certain places, you have people that you can rely on and people you can glean secrets and stuff from. The next is the Cultist, and I think this one might be my favorite because it's not like a cleric in a typical sense, right? This is more of a cultist in that you don't have to be sort of part of a church. You can be sort of a cultist and sort of spreading, you might follow a god, but you might also sort of be like a warlock type character in which that you're sort of you've dedicated yourself to some kind of an entity, a demon, whatever it is you want to kind of do. So it's a little bit more than a cleric, and I really like this kind of thing. You can also be something, kind of view yourself as a priest or maybe an inquisitor for some kind of a faith or some kind of an ideal that you're trying to push. What I really like about this cultist, and this is a problem I've had with games like D&D and stuff in the past, is that divine magic felt just like arcane magic, and there was really not a difference between the two, right? Other than just the sort of naming conventions and stuff. Maybe clerics had the ability to heal, that kind of stuff. What Pickpocket Press has done in this is that they've created the idea that there's not really so much spells as there are blessings. And some of those blessings sort of, they create the spell-like effects. But there's like healing abilities and stuff as well too. But I really like the fact that it's very distinct from spellcasting. It's not like a wizard which to study spells. These are blessings that they receive from whatever entity or god that they sort of follow. And that in whatever god that you follow, and there's some ideas in the book as well as some ideas for creating your own. Every god, every entity, every whatever it is that you follow, every sort of faith that you walk in, there are tenets that you have to follow, and if you don't, you lose the ability to have these blessings, right? And the tenets can be sometimes very strict, sometimes a little more loose, sometimes they're kind of goofy and lighthearted, sometimes they're very serious and things that you have to maybe partake in certain festivals every month or every year, some kind of thing. So there's ideas that you could lose the ability, like a wizard just has to restudy some spells, learn the magical incantations. That the cultist knows these things. He knows these prayers that can bring these blessings, but the blessings actually come from the power, the deity, right? And that if they're not in good terms with them, they lose the abilities of those. They have to follow those tenets of their particular religion. I really, really love that. At 10th level, as a cultist, you can establish a temple and begin to bring in followers and stuff as well. Fighter, pretty standard. It's a fighter, but what's interesting about this is that you have the ability, it's called adaptable. It allows you to be sort of an expert at certain types of fighting and the ability to change fighting styles, whether it be from a sword and shield kind of thing into a two-handed idea to a range kind of thing. You have studied weapons, you've studied warfare, you know what you're doing, whether you're a soldier or you're some mercenary or whatever. You know weapons very well, and you have the ability to be very adaptable and shifting between those different kinds of fighting styles. Next up, at 10th level, you have the ability to create a stronghold and start to bring people under sway and into your thing as well too, which is interesting because I think a stronghold is cool because if you think historically about strongholds and stuff, there are usually cities that sort of build up around them, villages to sort of support that stronghold or to take comfort in the fact that there's somebody there to protect them. So interesting, you could build a whole thing around that, and we're actually going to do that idea next week when we talk about the siege idea as well too. So we'll talk about strongholds and stronghold construction and sieges and such as well. Next up is the magic user. This is your wizards, your sorcerers, those types of things. They learn their spells by learning these using arcane lore and incantations and written spells, seeking out knowledge of eldritch, energies and stuff, and weaving them into spells. Magic we're going to go into in a further video further down the line, probably 2 weeks out, where I want to go fully into detail about how the spells work in this and how magic works in low fantasy gaming, because it's very unique and has some really cool twists to it as well too that makes it very, very interesting and rather dangerous. But you're gleaning as a wizard, you're gleaning, or as a magic user, you're gleaning magic through spell books and scrolls. And at 10th level, you create a tower in which you protect yourself, as well as you sort of storing a library of your knowledge and magic and lore and stuff as well. Next up is the monk. Monks are cool. Monks are not my favorite. I don't like to play monks, but I understand the appeal of them. They're sort of martial artists. They seek enlightenment. They have this not so much like a cultist where they're following a deity. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they're following sort of a theory of life, a philosophy, if you will. And trying to better themselves, to seek enlightenment through their own sort of travels and or deeds and stuff. So you get martial arts techniques, things like the impossible leap, the purity of self, cleansing your body of toxins and wounds. The impossible leap, being able to do these crazy martial art techniques. At 10th level, you create a monastery in which you can bring others to learn about your philosophy and your techniques and begin to teach them as well too, sort of a sensei type of an idea. Next up, we have the ranger. Ranger, again, pretty typical. I really like the fact that rangers get an animal companion. It's always one of my favorite things about a ranger. Of course, they live in the wilderness. They're going to gather, they may have a crow or an owl or a mountain lion or something as sort of their friend, their companion, because they're in the wilderness. They're not going to have like other people. They might have other rangers or something to help them do their duties, but it's more interesting to have them sort of be having befriended some type of an animal or something, a dog, a wolf, that kind of thing. You also get skills in wilderness lore. You know things like plants and animals and how to read the weather and those kinds of things, and how to scout and how to track. At 10th level, you create an outpost. This is a place, doesn't necessarily have to be a building, but sometimes is, where the rest of the land around you is a place under your protection and sort of the natural environment and stuff. And finally, last but not least, as they say, you have the rogue character, which is a scout, a thief, an assassin, what you would think of when you think of rogue. But there's a nice variety. There's a nice sort of gray area there. You don't have to be a thief. You can be more of a scout type of a character. You can be more of a scoundrel in that you have, think like Lando Calrissian, right? More of a scoundrel type character, where he's not so much a thief. He is to some degree, but more as like an informant or somebody who gathers knowledge, secrets, knows how to get into places. It's kind of a charmer. So there's a nice gray area there that you're not just sort of pigeonholed into a specific class or, the term of a thief or an assassin. There's a nice little variety of stuff there to pick from. You have things like backstab abilities, that kind of stuff as well too. You get cool things called tricks and talents. The idea of having these items that are specific to you and that you can employ in your nefarious deeds, right? Things like choking dust, being able to throw it into people's faces, makes them cough and wheeze and sneeze or whatever. It allows you to get a chance to get away. Hidden blades, right? Weapons that are hidden in your sleeves, or maybe in the lower part of your back or in a boot or something. You have these abilities to have these weapons. You're always sort of armed even when you're not armed, kind of idea. And at 10th level, you're able to establish in a guild in, wherever that it is that you might be, this town or city or region. You have the ability to start training others in the ways of the rogue and stuff as well too. So those are the classes you're going to find in low fantasy gaming. Really, really cool. I love that most of them are sort of familiar, but they have some nice changes to them. There's some very unique differences in some of them that make it very distinct from other role-playing games on the market, other fantasy games that are out there. And I really appreciate that, because in creating a game, something like this, you want your game to be unique. You want your game to sort of stand out amongst the other games that are on the market. And that because of the era that we're living in, and the fact that there are so many, we're in a golden age of role-playing, folks. There are so many games out there and so many people creating games that it can be hard to sort of find your niche in that market. And so that's what I really appreciate about low fantasy gaming, is it does, while it's very familiar in being a fantasy game, it does have a very distinct sort of outlook on that type of game, and the creation of things and how the game is played and how you play the game. So that's characters in a nutshell. Like I said, next time we're going to talk about creating a scenario, an adventure in which a siege is happening upon a town and a tower, and we'll talk about how you can use this game to build that type of a scenario. And then the following video, we'll talk about magic and how magic works and the cool things that Steven has done with magic in this game. I'm Questwise, and until next time, I am out.